Hi, we are at day 10 of Upskill in GCP. In today's session, we'll talk about storage and that too storage of static objects. So in cloud world, when it comes to storage, all these static files, so static files, it can be an MP3 file, it can be a JPEG, it can be your font size, which is basically going to be the same content, whoever is going to request you. So those things we call it as static content. And in the cloud terminology, irrespective of AWS or GCP, they call this as objects. So we are going to see one of the service which is going to store the objects, which is the static files. As I said, it can be a JPEG, TXT file, HTML file, or the fonts file, likewise. Okay, so for any beginner, even though you don't have any use case, even just to store as a backup, you can go with the objects. So what would be the use case here? Obviously, the first one, it's going to be for storing. And then since we talk about storing, we need to think about performance, like for whom we are storing, and we would need to talk about the latency as aspect, like where are you going to store it, and from where your user is going to retrieve this. So that will come under the latency aspect, like at what place you're going to store. And then the second would come in terms of like security, who can access your content, and how we are going to store your data. Are you going to encrypt it? If you are going to encrypt it, then how are you going to encrypt it? Then the third factor would be in terms of cost wise. Are you going to retrieve the content more often, or are you planning to store the content just in terms of uh, backup? So depends upon the use case, the cost optimization we want to do it. And then the last one would come is in terms of life cycle, like how long you want to store the file, or how long you want to move the category of the file, likewise. So all these are topics you would generally need to know when dealing about storing a static file. And then there would be one more use case in terms of like using the same storage service to host a public website. Okay, so all these are the generic use cases anyone could consider when it comes to dealing with static file. We call it as objects. So in GCP, you can go for the left side. In case if you are not aware about like what service the objects or the static files will be stored, you don't know what product to be used, you can go here and view all products. So what GCP does is it's going to categorize the services based on the use case or based on the purpose. And if you see, you can see here there is a category for storage, and you have something called cloud storage, which is to enterprise ready object storage. So now we know if anything on static related files, I need to use this specific service called cloud storage. Again, if you can expand it, it takes you to the relevant docs and relevant hands-on part. So let's go for the cloud storage. So the one thing, as you know, or as you've seen in the previous sessions of day 1 to day 9, is that all the documents is being incorporated within the UI itself. So if you want to know like how much pricing details is being mentioned over here, and if you want to provide a naming for your bucket or the storage, it gives you a documentation page like what are the things to be get considered. So when you are going to learn or upskill into the GCP, try to go each and every documentation, take baby steps. You don't need to rush just for the showcase of doing it, so that you can be master in any service which you picked up. So let's go and create a bucket name. So I'll keep it as evi hyphen demo hyphen objects, and then labels is more of a tag based, and let's keep it as environment as prod. And if you give continue, it's going to ask me like, should it be a multi-region bucket or the region based? So this is where the latency thing comes in, or performance topic comes in. So based on your location, you would choose the region so that you can retrieve the file faster, or it's available more quicker than to avoid the latency aspect of it. So if I look for, I'm from India, so if I see in Asia South, Mumbai, that would be the more closest one. So I would just go with this. And then you can talk about choose a storage class for your data. And so this is where it comes in terms of the purpose also been listed given here. So if it's going for short storage, or like you're going to keep on frequently access data, then you're going to go with standard. If it's just for backup, assess less than once a month, then it would go nearline, and then less than once a quarter, cold line, and then the archive would be like less than once a year. So the major differentiation factor is in standard, there won't be much cost to retrieve the data, but there would be like higher cost for storing the data. More down you go, there would be like lesser cost for storing data, whereas the cost would increase high for the retrieving the data. That's why how frequent you're going to retrieve the data, you need to choose it, rather how the cost of the storing the data would be like less. Okay, so if we go for continue, and then you can see about access control. It's about like, are you going to provide public access to the bucket, or how you want to control the one. So here they're going to talk about like two level of permission, one in terms of uniform, which is like you provide a permission that's going to apply for all the objects, and then the fine grained, you can set a unique permission for each and every object you upload to the bucket. So for demo purpose, we'll go with fine grain. Again, the documentation clearly says in case if you choose uniform, after 90 days, you can't change the bucket permission option to fine grain. So that's something you need to keep in mind. If you go with continue, then you talk about the protection of the data. So here you talk about versioning in case if something, the object gets updated, do you want to keep track of the data that's been updated? If something gets deleted, do you want to keep track of the file deleted and have the backup of deleted copy? Those things comes under the versioning. Retention, like how long minimum it should get retained and more. So as we talked about, I don't want to repeat documentation. Go here, learn more under each section, and then try to grab the topic what's been discussed. The next one is in terms of security wise, how are you going to encrypt the data at rest? Are you going to ask the GCP to manage the encryption key, or are you going to provide the custom key, which is managed by you to encrypt the data? So since our current topic is focusing on storage, let's keep it simple to go with Google Managed Encryption Key. In the upcoming days, when we talk about the encryption or the specific key related services, we'll go more into that. And let's go and create a bucket. Done. So the bucket has been created now. Again, let's try to go and view the data. So now I can create a folder here within the bucket. It's simplified, so let's keep it as demo. And you can also upload the files by clicking over here, upload files, and have some JSON file over here. So let me upload it. So the JSON file got uploaded. Each file would consist of a metadata. So metadata is something like what file type, or you can add any additional details. So you can add those kind of metadata over here by going and edit metadata, and you would see like based on the .json, it could identify the content type as application JSON, and you can add custom metadata like owner, and maybe I'll keep it my channel name evidai as the metadata in the file. You can also provide access to it, like who can access your file. Like for example, you see uh, I can add a user, and then maybe for public, all users, reader, and then I can save it. So we call it as ACL here, so that anyone from the public can access this, and you can see more details around that. If I click here, and you can access the data, and you see it's public access, and it's been public to internet, and the public URL for the JSON file is this. So it would comes like storage dot googleapis.com/but. So all the public URL is going to come from that specific domain name. So if I click it, since I gave the ACL, it gave me this specific key over there. Okay, so that's more of it in terms of uh, providing the bucket at the ACL level. If you go to the life cycle, you can create a life cycle rule saying that when to get stored, or do you want to delete the objects after specific a period, let's say after every 30 days, the objects get destroyed, or how we want to manage the life cycle. So you can create the life cycle rules so that you don't need to manually come and go and destroy the one. So if you see, it's quite easy to do it. So if you scroll up and if you come for the bucket section, you can see any buckets has been there, and you can see one rule has been added and delete objects more than 30 days. So you can add as many lifecycle rules for your own use case. So it's pretty straightforward. You can see like you can also provide a wider level permissions in terms of like rather object level permission. You can go to over here and then add principals to see that who can access your bucket. So by default, these are the bucket owner and details been provided. You can add uh, grant access and then provide the principals. So that would be like a entire bucket level permissions to provide access. So depends upon the use case. Either you can go with the entire bucket level permission, or you can go with the individual object level ACL part. So we also mentioned about using the storage buckets for the purpose of hosting your website. Might be you can consider it taking as a personal project to see how you can host a static website. There is already a step-by-step guide given by the GCP. I think I don't want to repeat again from my end in terms of setting it up. In case if you would like to go through that, do comment. I'll make a separate video about like how to host a website in the GCP cloud storage. You also can navigate the UI in terms of what all options been available, as in observability and the other aspects. So the observability itself will be a different topic altogether. So we'll talk about those in the upcoming sessions. Okay, so that's more about it. How to navigate the GCP, how to land in the how to identify the right service to store the objects, and how we can create and upload the file, create a folder, and so on. One thing I forgot to mention about is you can also move the objects. For example, you have the .json here, and let's say if you want to move it to the demo folder, you can go and move, and then it's going to ask you like where, and then you can choose the right folder, and it's going to be get moved over there. Okay, so yeah, it's quite easy, quite simplified service. Give it a try, and how it's done.